Imagine sitting in a quiet restaurant, soft music playing in the background, the clink of glasses and hushed laughter filling the air. You're raising your glass for a sip of wine, when suddenly, a faint voice breaks through the noise. "Don't drink that, your wife put something in your glass." Those words, whispered from a stranger, could change a man's entire life. And that's where our story begins. If you find yourself drawn into this tale, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end. You don't want to miss the lesson buried inside this story. Armin was a man who had everything most people dreamed of. A beautiful house, a respected career in finance, and a wife, Sana, who seemed perfect in the eyes of the world. To everyone else, he was the definition of success. But behind closed doors, his life was more fragile than anyone could imagine. For months, Armin had been struggling with growing distance between him and Sana. She had grown cold, distracted, and distant. Whenever he tried to talk, she brushed him off with excuses about being tired or busy. Armin told himself it was just a phase, that marriage had its ups and downs, and that love would win again if he held on. That night, they were at their favorite restaurant. It was meant to be a fresh start, at least, that's what Armin thought. He had brought her here, to the place where he first proposed years ago, hoping the nostalgia would spark the fire again. He wore his best suit, smiled as though nothing was wrong, and ordered the same bottle of wine they once shared when they were young and in love. He told himself silently, tonight will be the night things heal. But while he was lost in hope, something else was happening across the room. Near the entrance, a thin girl with unkempt hair, her clothes ragged and shoes falling apart, was hovering by the door. She looked no older than 19, yet life had already hardened her face. Her name was Aisha, and she was one of those faces people usually ignored, the kind that begged on street corners, invisible to the rush of the world. But Aisha had a sharp eye, and though people often dismissed her, she noticed things others didn't. She noticed the way Sana's hand slipped into her purse when Armin wasn't looking. She noticed the tiny packet Sana discreetly opened under the table, and how her fingers lingered over Armin's glass. Aisha's heart raced. She didn't know this man, didn't know his story. But she knew danger when she saw it. For a moment, she hesitated, should she speak up? Who would even believe her, a homeless girl who couldn't afford food? But then she thought of her own father. He, too, had once been deceived, and she had lost him because no one warned him. She couldn't let it happen again, not if she could stop it. So she stepped forward, her voice trembling yet firm. "Don't drink that," she said, loud enough for Armin to hear. "Your wife put something in your glass." The restaurant froze. Armin's hand, inches from his lips, halted midair. His eyes widened as he turned to look at Aisha. At first, he was confused, then offended. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice sharp. Sana immediately scoffed, acting insulted. "This is ridiculous," she said, glaring at the girl. "She's just some street rat trying to ruin our evening. Throw her out." But something in Aisha's eyes stopped him. It wasn't the look of someone lying. It was desperation, raw and real, like she was putting her own soul on the line. Against his wife's protests, Armin quietly called the waiter to bring another empty glass. With steady hands, he poured the wine from his own glass into the new one. "If this is nonsense," he said, looking at Sana, "then prove it. Take the first sip." Sana froze. Her mask slipped for a fraction of a second, and that was all Armin needed. He felt the ground beneath him collapse. His wife's silence was louder than any confession. "Sana," his voice cracked, trembling with disbelief. "Why? After everything?" Her eyes filled with bitterness instead of remorse. "Because I'm done," she hissed. "Done living in your shadow, done pretending. You think you're so perfect, Armin, but you suffocate me. I wanted out, and this was the only way." The room spun. The woman he had loved, sacrificed for, trusted more than anyone, had been willing to take his life just to free herself. Armin felt his chest tighten with grief and betrayal. His world shattered in seconds. The manager quickly called the police, and within moments Sana was escorted away, hurling venomous words as though Armin was the villain in her story. When the chaos ended, Armin sat in silence, staring at the untouched wine. His hands shook, his heart broken beyond repair. But then his eyes met Aisha's. She was still standing there awkwardly, her face pale, as though she had crossed a line she wasn't allowed to. She muttered softly, "I'm sorry if I ruined your evening. I just couldn't stay quiet." Armin stood and walked over to her. For the first time in hours, warmth returned to his expression. "No," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't ruin my evening. You saved my life." Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. Nobody had said those words to her in years. Nobody had ever looked at her like she mattered. She had been invisible for so long, surviving on scraps, her existence reduced to pity and scorn. Yet in that moment, she realized she still had a purpose, that she could still make a difference. Armin couldn't leave her like that. He offered her a meal.